Okay, so thank you everyone for joining this month's LinkedIn Experts live call. For those of you who've been on these sessions before, you'll know it's a live Q&A with a LinkedIn expert we've invited for the day to try and answer as many of your burning questions about using LinkedIn as possible. I'm delighted today to be joined by Jeff Young. Many of you will know Jeff already. You'll have seen his famous namaste on lots of his comments and posts. But yeah, Jeff is one of a number of real experts on LinkedIn we've been privileged to have on these calls. So Jeff, thank you very much for making time for today. Would you like to just start by, if you just tell everyone what it is you do for those people who don't know you and don't know who you help?
Certainly, thank you, Tony. Of course, namaste, okay, which by the way is a traditional Indian greeting that means that the spirit inside me honors and respects the spirit inside you. So how else would a guru, the LinkedIn guru, introduce himself? I want to say, first of all, thank you very, very much for taking the opportunity. Your previous guest list looks like a who's who of my network. As a matter of fact, there are so many people that I already know, and I call them my tribe, and they come across like that. So I do pretty much what those people do as well. I teach LinkedIn, and again, I normally introduce myself as the LinkedIn guru, but you know, I make a point about not calling myself an expert. I make a point about calling myself a guru instead, because of the fact that my network calls me the guru. That's where I got that brand. Someone came up, who was a good friend of mine, came up to me after one of my seminars, and he said, "You know what, Jeff? You're a real guru with this." And I said, guru, yeah, I kind of like the sound of that. I think I'll start using it. And so when I looked up guru in the dictionary, I'm also a LinkedIn teacher. Guru means teacher. The word guru means teacher. And so I also sometimes introduce myself by saying, "Hi, I'm a teacher. What's your superpower?" Okay, so now I'm sure you've had some of my other friends on here as far as guests is concerned as well, but probably none of them disrobed as we went through this process. So I apologize if I scared anybody with that, but that's me. I'm the LinkedIn guru. I do what I do out on LinkedIn. Pretty much I concentrate on all things LinkedIn, except for maybe Sales Navigator, because I don't do Sales Navigator. But I concentrate as far as helping people mostly in the job hiring, the job seeking environment, especially my local environment. Correct. Because thank goodness now we're actually getting to go back out and do more in-person kinds of things rather than the Zoom calls that I've been doing for the last 2+ years. As a matter of fact, I did my third. I've still only done 3 live sessions. I mean, in-person sessions in real life. But I did my third one not too long ago, last week, so that was fun.
Well, thank you so much for making the time for today, Jeff. And we're going to run through some of the questions we've had in, a couple of things that I wanted to ask you as well. And then if people on the call want to submit live questions, we'll get to all of those as well. So just to kick things off, I see quite a lot of conversations about etiquette on LinkedIn. You know, how is it best to behave on there? Is it the same as being at an in-person event? You know, how should you react? How should you interact with others? Do you have any quick thoughts on that, just to kick things off?
Yeah, I think in general, one of the things that I talk about LinkedIn in terms of, you know, considering LinkedIn to be a 24/7, 365 networking event. I mean, it's going on constantly. With people all over the world. So treat it like you would at a real life event. I mean, you know, introducing yourself, for example, or when you're trying to connect with someone, you wouldn't walk up to someone, throw a business card at them and run, right? You know, so it's just probably not a good idea. It won't give you a good impression. So I'd recommend that you introduce yourself. And one of the ways that I like to do that, I really enjoy people who join the conversation first. It kind of like you would at an event, you know, or especially if you want to introduce someone else. I'd like to introduce you to, you know, kind of person. That's a great thing to do on LinkedIn. One of my favorite pastimes on LinkedIn is find someone who's got a need, find someone who can fulfill that need, and introduce those two people. And it works. I get to do that practically every day, which is really great. But joining the conversation through comments and that kind of thing, I think is probably one of the best things that you can do to start a conversation, to add your own 2 cents to the conversation. I know that a lot of people out there, obviously there's over 840 million of them out there, and obviously not all of them are contributing content and not all of them are joining the conversation. But when you do join the conversation, I think it's great to at least join the conversation by maybe adding your own experience, or join a conversation by maybe asking a question. It's okay to ask a question, because that's why I'm here today, is to answer questions. That's what I love to do as a teacher. So it really helps that process along. And so treating it, as I know this will probably sound trite, but treating LinkedIn like the golden rule, okay, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is probably the best process. It's just one of the things that, I don't concentrate on some of the things that you shouldn't do, but we talked a little bit about this the other day. I think you even call it link jacking, which is a new term. I'd never heard that term, but basically, if you comment on something, adding your 2 cents with is great, but not pointing someone to one of your posts or something else, unless you have the permission of the original author of the post, that's considered bad form, at least in my case, I believe anyway. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, thank you.
Yep.
And yeah, I think I'm probably the same, Jeff. I always like to go back to imagining I'm in a room in person with whoever I'm interacting with, and when I read back a comment that I've left, is that a bit more, forceful than I would be if I was in person? And then maybe I'll tone it back to what I would have said if we were actually stood there having a conversation. And I tend to find that stands you in really good stead.
The conversations are what really lead to, well, in people who I talk to that are sales oriented, conversations lead to conversions, okay? Lead to customers who get converted. It's amazing. And that's, I think, the best part about LinkedIn is that it's been one of the best places I've ever seen to build relationships with people that are ongoing relationships.
Yes.
There are a lot of people that I've connected with, that I've stayed connected with for a long period of time. But in most of those instances, I haven't necessarily reached out to them to actually ask to connect with them directly. It's been more of a thing where we end up connecting because we've already conversed. Okay. And it works great that way. You kind of get to know a person by, and I guess that's another piece of etiquette, is to be yourself, be exactly as you would be in real life. And that way, it comes across right. It's really a whole lot better when you're branding somebody. I mean, I actually would do the Superman reveal in real life. Honestly, I would. It's not just because I'm protected behind the camera and there's nobody here in the room with me. I would actually do that in real life. I do it in my seminars all the time.
Terrific. And another question I like to put to the experts we have on is hidden features, and this is aided by the fact that LinkedIn seems to roll out new features and functionality all the time. Very often does so without even, making an announcement about it. Exactly. If there were, a couple of things that you think people ought to know about and ought to be using that perhaps they might not know about, what would be some of the things you would draw attention to?
Well, I totally agree with you. You said almost never. I would leave it at never. LinkedIn never announces what they're coming out with. At least in my case, I've never heard of a lot of the things that are there. And there are. I've been on LinkedIn since May of 2004. I've not been really utilizing it completely since then, but since 2008, I've been teaching it. And there are two things that I've found about LinkedIn. They love to change things. Okay. I actually kept track in a separate document, because they never have a place where you could go that, as a blog of here's the latest changes. Okay, so I kept track in a separate document of how many changes they did over a year's worth of time. And I had 60 different instances of changes. So that's more than one a week. So they're rolling out, and somebody's getting paid to roll out new features. It's obvious. Okay. And so they love to change things. The second thing is that they love to hide things. And part of it is that they put it behind something that, I mean, honest to goodness, they even hide the help button. Okay, Tony. I mean, a lot of people in my seminars are just getting started on LinkedIn. I ask them, has anybody seen the help button? Show me the help button on LinkedIn. And people go, I don't see it. It's not, you know, it's kind of because it's hidden behind the me button. So I give people, you know, a little tip there. I said, when you're asking LinkedIn to help, you're asking LinkedIn to help me. Okay, so think of the me button and you'll find the help, and you should be able to, you know, get it there. Now, probably everybody on this call knows where the help button is. I hope so anyway. But one of the other things that I find that is not, it's hidden in plain sight. But one of the things that people don't take advantage of and remains hidden, okay, is the opportunity to do a background photo or banner. And I describe it sometimes as if I did a little straw poll, okay, and it's been a while since I did it, and it's, I think, a little bit better than this now. But I looked at the My Network tab on my LinkedIn, where it suggests people, okay, and as you scroll down through, you can see their profile picture and their background banner if they have one, okay. Well, the point was, I went down through and I looked at like 20 people, okay, and here were my results. 16 of those people didn't even have a background banner, okay? And so it's not that tough to make one, but 16 people didn't even have it. So they had a bad case of what I call the grays, okay? Because if you don't put anything up there, it just has 3 gray, you know, 3 shades of gray, and that's all that shows. So 16 people didn't even have one. 2 people had a cityscape picture with nothing else. 1 person had a sunset or sunrise. I couldn't tell which. Pretty picture, but, you know, et cetera. It doesn't really, still doesn't tell me anything about them. And 1 person actually had a banner that had words on it and had, you know, like, go to this website. Here I am, you know, graphically oriented, of course, but, you know, it's not clickable, but it was there. So only 1 out of 20 people had a banner that actually would tell me what their brand is. And it's so important because that banner is up at the top of the screen. So get yourself one, and if you're not graphically oriented like this left brainer, okay, I used to be an IT geek. No, I'm still an IT geek to a certain extent, but you know, working in IT, I was very texturally oriented. Okay, so I've forced myself to be graphically oriented, but I've also forced myself to use tools that help me be graphically oriented easily. So, for example, I don't know whether anyone else has ever mentioned this on your show, but a really good graphic for all kinds of templates, okay, is www.canva.com, canva.com. Go to canva.com and search for something called LinkedIn templates. And they have templates for posts, they have templates for the background banner. And literally, that's how I did mine, is I went to Canva, took a few of my own graphics, uploaded it, and if you go look at my banner, guess who's there? The boy in blue, okay, you know, the last son of Krypton is in the background, you know, on my banner as well. So you should be able to go and create something in Canva. Then the real reason you want to do that is because it's a template and it makes it the right size in the first place. Because if you upload just any graphic you have, it may cut you off. You know, this is all you might see of what you want to see. So that template, and by the way, to get really technical geeky on you, that's 1,584 pixels by 396 pixels. I looked it up. Okay, I could never remember that. Okay, and oh, by the way, it has to be a JPEG or PNG file that it automatically creates in Canva. You know what? If I could use a GIF on my background banner, I would, because GIFs actually do this and have motion to get you to pay attention. So I might do that as well. So that's one of the things that is so upfront. It's the first thing that people see. So it's an important place where if you're not utilizing it to put something in there with words and music, not literally music, but words and music, it's not doing your brand any good, and it should be.
Thank you. And I would add in one that's come up very recently is, and again, it's been done pretty quietly, but the ability for company pages now to publish a newsletter. So obviously LinkedIn newsletters have been around for quite a while, but up until now, it's always been an individual that publishes them. And you know, if you're a business owner, you may or may not want individual members of your team publishing a newsletter. because that could walk out the door if they should leave the business. Well, now as a company, you can publish a LinkedIn newsletter, and it's exactly the same in terms of functionality as an individual publishing. The key thing is that it is promoted to your followers. So if you've got a decent number of followers on your company page, then this is really a powerful way of getting in front of people. If you're still down at only a couple of hundred followers, then perhaps not so much worth the effort.
But it might be a way of building more followers as well, because I really found newsletters to be kind of not a hidden feature. Obviously, I've had my newsletter, personal newsletter. I don't publish one for my company. I've had one since August of 2020. So that was long before about a year or so later, that they rolled it out to the masses. Okay, and so it's been an excellent way, because of the fact that it's one of the very few ways and inside of LinkedIn where people can actually subscribe to something and tell LinkedIn, I want to see this stuff specifically. Okay, which is what the bell is supposed to do and has done from a personal profile perspective.
Yeah, great.
One I'll mention now that is also fairly new, I think, and still being rolled out, is that there's a new thing underneath the share button. They're now differentiating. Well, there's actually now like 5 options under the share button, one of which is repost, 2 of them which are inside LinkedIn, one of which is repost, and then the share with your thoughts, which is like the old share. Okay, the new repost is really not allowing you to make any comment on the post itself, but it just reposts it into your activity, so your network has a chance of seeing it. I kind of like repost myself personally a little better than the share with your thoughts. First of all, because the repost really literally doesn't give you number of views about it. It's reposting the original post, so that all the views and all the metrics are against the original author's stuff. And that's what I want to do when I usually repost. Is I want to take that author stuff and pass it to my network. So that really works for me. And then the second reason is that notoriously, share with your thoughts is kind of a lazy dog as far as the algorithm is concerned. It does not get as much love from the algorithm, but when you go through the actual share with your own thoughts. So that's why I like repost better. And then the other ones are sharing it to places off of LinkedIn. They can actually let you share a post from LinkedIn to Facebook and to Twitter. And then the 5th option is actually copy the link to the post, like you could do from the 3 dots, what I call the magic 3 dots. Okay, and copy the link to the post is the 3rd option, where you could actually then take it anywhere else you want and drop the link in to a DM or email message or wherever. Okay, so that's another new one, and kind of hidden unless you actually think to click on the share button.
And that is a good way for companies that want their company posts to get more visibility to actually start leveraging all the individual team members you've got. And while the company post on its own may not get that much visibility because of the way the algorithm works, if enough of your team get behind that and repost it rather than reshare it, then that will help.
It helps.
So questions that have come in. Once and for all, can we please establish if an external link in a post hurts the post's visibility because the algorithm wants people to stay on the original post? And lots of you will probably remember the days when people would write a post and they would say the link is in the comments. And that was because back then LinkedIn really did punish a post. If it included a link in it, then it would get seen less. So this question's asking for an update on that. Is it still the case that link posts will bomb?
Yeah, again, the answer has to end up being yes, no, maybe, depending on where you are in the algorithm, history. Okay, what I'm told now by all the folks that I interact with and network with that do this and have a handle on the algorithm is that no, it does not hurt to have a link inside. Now, again, all I ever have is anecdotal evidence. There are lots of other folks who do some real experimentation with this. So I listen to them, and they quote the data, and they say, no, it does not affect the reach of the post. It's not going to be detrimental to put a link, okay, an external link to in your post. A lot of times when I'm doing a link, though, I'm doing a link to an internal link anyway, because I'm referencing something from somebody else. But a link, any link, apparently now does not hurt the reach of your post, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
And I would verify that as well from all the client work that we do, and from some of the LinkedIn experts, as you say, who've done a lot of testing on this and shared the results. What it is worth saying though is a lazy link will still do poorly. So one of the big things that the LinkedIn algorithm is looking at now is how long are people staying on your post, or it's called dwell time.
Dwell time, yeah.
And how much engagement is there on your post. So if you've got a post to I don't know, an external interview or blog or something, and you've written a good summary of what people will find when they go to that article, and you've thrown in a couple of bits of controversy, or you've asked some probing questions, and that's encouraged people to read the post and click the link and then take part in the comments, that post will do really well, and will do as well as if it didn't have a link in at all. Whereas if you just share a link and say, saw this today and thought it was an interesting read, well, that's not encouraging anyone to stay on the post or contribute to the discussion. So yes, then that post will probably do poorly, but it's not specifically because it's got a link in.
Because of the link, yeah.
It's just the nature of the post isn't encouraging that engagement. Yeah. So
I find that a related, and I again, this is something that dwell time was one of the things that changed this, I think, a great deal. One of the other things I'll bring up is the golden hour, they used to call it. You remember? Yeah, you remember hearing about the golden hour? When you posted something, you should be on there for the golden hour, and the golden hour made a huge difference about the number of reactions and the number of comments that you got in that first hour. Dwell times changed that a great deal, I think. And I also think that it's not just an hour anymore. I think it's a lot longer than that. But to some degree, it's not. There's a determining factor there, because there has to be a, well, for lack of a better term, on any and every post, there's what would be termed in the old IT genre of a hype cycle. Okay, it goes like this, and then it tails off. It goes away. That's still true, but I find that a lot of my posts, especially if those posts are longer form content like newsletters, get comments lots of long after they were originally posted. So don't think that's. I still think it's important for you to babysit your post. Actually, that's a piece of etiquette for me. Back to the etiquette. For me, if you're going to post something, you should try to, if at all possible, spend some time with that post right after you do that post for an hour or so to interact as quickly as you can with the comments that come from it. Okay, so that it will get as much of a boost as it can out of the algorithm. But it's not as necessary as it used to be, I don't believe.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And someone else has said, I've just started using the providing services feature. Have connected it to my business page, requested my first review, but I'm not sure how valuable that feature is, or how you can go about increasing the visibility of your providing services section. So any thoughts around that?
Yeah, let me give you some thoughts, and I also, before I do that, I want to point you to something that I think will help you a great deal in terms of answering the service page question. Actually, that almost qualifies, services page almost qualifies as a hidden feature to some degree. Unless you've actually told LinkedIn that you want to say you're providing services and set the page up like this person has, etc., you might not even find it. You'd have to go looking, for the help on it in order to find out how to even start that process. But that's what I want to help with. One of my newsletters several months back was actually be effective on LinkedIn by creating a services page. Okay, so please go to my profile. If you scroll down to my my featured section, the very first item in my featured section is always a link. You have it on yours as well. It's the second thing, I think, in your featured section to your newsletter. Okay, Tony. So click that. It will take you to the list of newsletters, and then scroll down the list of 25 newsletters. I actually have 25 newsletters that I've done over the last 2 years. Scroll down to the one that says, create a services page, and take a look at that article, please. But I would tell you that I think it is valuable. A lot of people don't think that it's valuable from a couple of perspectives. First of all, I have set one up of my own. I have not necessarily generated any quote unquote business from it, because I've not had anybody actually click the proposal button, give me a proposal button, etc. Ask for services, if you will. So that hasn't happened. But what has happened is that it's another social proof area, okay, that you can use to ask for and collect reviews. I actually have over 30 reviews on my services page. And even though I don't even have a real company, I've got a services page. I'm not in business, okay? I don't really own a real business, okay? So I just teach seminars. So I've got 30 reviews, and it's just like anything else. Unless you actually use it, unless you actually take the link to it and point people to that link more consistently than anything else, you won't, it's going to be hidden for them as well. So you won't get anything out of it. So if you're showing people that services page, it will make a great deal of difference. And it's more social proof. And all of those things are good from the overall proof standpoint of the great and all and powerful Oz. Oh, excuse me, that's not Oz, it's Google. Okay. So those things show up on Google as well. Just like newsletters and articles and those kind of things get indexed on Google, those kind of things show up on Google as well. Because if you actually went and did a Google search, for example, hashtag the LinkedIn Guru, you would actually come up with a link to my services page out of that as well. As one of the things that you would see. So I think it's quite beneficial. But it doesn't become beneficial unless you point people to it. Just like your profile just sits there unless you actually are advertising and doing something with it and pointing people to it.
Well, that brings us on nicely to another question we had, which is how could LinkedIn be used to launch a new website? In this particular instance, they're saying for a professional services business, but I guess same would apply for any new website being launched. Any tips or thoughts on what to do, what might work, what doesn't work?
Well, it's kind of like writing an article to some extent. I think posting about what you're doing there would be a great way of getting the word out, okay, for example. But I would end up actually, utilizing, again, I think when you're trying to do something with a link that is something separate that you want people to focus on, you've got to use all of the venues, like the services page, like the company page, like the, et cetera. You like posting, all kinds of different things about your new website to get people to come to it, to link to it. Because again, if you don't help people pay attention to it, it just won't necessarily get found. So I'd almost like, I'd end up doing several different varieties of posts about it. I might do a video about it with the text that has the link. I might do a document post that would have the link inside the document post, because again, there's kind of a little hidden feature. A lot of people, well, I don't know. I mean, most people should, but a lot of people don't realize that you can actually, any document that you see, any document post, any PDF that you see in a post, you can actually download that PDF for yourself. So it's great because you can download the PDF, and once you download the PDFs, the links that are inside the PDFs are active. They're not active on the actual post. So it makes a huge difference there. So again, the more avenues that you can do, it's like that old saying about, if you want to get to a customer, it takes 7 different touches, okay, in marketing to market to a customer. Kind of the similar kind of thing as far as LinkedIn is concerned. And I'd be interested in your take on what you might do, Tony, in terms of what kinds of posts you might do, because the different kinds of posts, like we talked about before with the algorithm, they get different levels of reach. So it makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would highlight a couple of things there. The first thing I would really flag is, and we know this because we use a tool called Q, which syndicates specialist blog content to people all around the world who want to share that kind of content. So they are facilitating shares of millions of bits of content each year. But what's really interesting from that is the average social media post only generates 1 click. So, you know, if your company and its employees are average, and there's no reason to think that they're going to be superhuman, so they're average. You know, if you've got 50 employees and they all put out a post about there being a new company website, you know, you're talking about it getting 50 clicks or 100 clicks. So it's not, you know, earth-shattering in terms of getting that new website known about. I think what I have seen done really well is using video, especially if there's someone in the business who hasn't posted much video yet. We consistently find, and I think it's LinkedIn trying to encourage you to use video, the first couple of videos that anyone individually posts do incredibly well. And then the performance tails off a bit after that. But so if you can create a video about the new website launch, have someone post that who hasn't been posting much video, and ideally get, you know, all your other employees jumping on that post and making a splash about it, then, you know, that can have a really big impact. We did a launch actually for a new business within the last weeks, and in that particular instance, they had a group of alumni from, you know, the school that they'd studied at, and so they were able to put out an instant message to that whole school, which we helped them orchestrate, and you know, that's one of the most successful posts I've seen on LinkedIn in a long time, but because it was able to get, you know, that huge volume of interaction taking place. So yeah, I think, you know, whether you're sharing jobs, whether you're trying to promote a new website, whether you're trying to make a splash about some special deal you've got going on, you've always got to keep in the back of your mind that each post is only likely to generate, you know, a click or a very small number of clicks. And so alongside, you know, your alternatives of paying to advertise that and get thousands of clicks, you know, it's a low impact method by comparison.
Yeah, it makes sense, but it's also a really good way of leveraging what isn't entirely free within LinkedIn, to just coordinate it to some degree, where you'd want your team to be all on the same page, you know, and advertising, if you will, the same thing at the same time.
Yes.
It's funny for me because one of the other things that people keep thinking about LinkedIn is that I'll click this button and it will, all of a sudden, magic will happen. Okay, and that, you know, it's not like that, not really. It takes some time, it takes devotion, it takes understanding how the tool works. You know, I sometimes, I think one of my friends actually in the UK likens LinkedIn to a gym membership. Okay, you know, if you don't go to the gym and you don't learn how to use the equipment, it probably won't meet your goals. And the same thing is true as far as LinkedIn is concerned. You need to learn how to use the equipment in the most effective fashion. And that's why a lot of my newsletters all start with the words "be effective on LinkedIn by," and then, you know, and then I have 5 to 10 minutes worth of time that I talk about a particular different subject. And it's been 25 different subjects that I've talked about. So it's 20 at least, or it's a whole lot more than that. It's at least 25 different things that you might want to consider about how to be effective in certain ways, whether you use audio, whether you use video, whether, you know, whether or not how you even process your notifications is a key way that you might be more effective on LinkedIn. Just, you know, while I'm on that subject, I know that 6 out of every 10 people probably on this call, if there's a standard statistic, are using a mobile device to use LinkedIn versus the desktop. But personally, I am an old school kind of guy, and I really favor the desktop because there are so many things that I like to do that I would want to do on the desktop versus the mobile device. A la, for example, write a newsletter. It's not possible to write a newsletter. And who would want to sit there and do this to write a newsletter on LinkedIn, on a mobile device anyway? So, that's the key. So be aware of where you can be most effective with LinkedIn as well, whether it be desktop or mobile.
Okay. Question we've had through is, any advice on getting good InMail conversions? This is from a recruiter who's tried approaching people with jobs with short copy, long copy, salesy, more advisory, a link to find more details included. I know I've got some thoughts on that, but any experiences yourself, Jeff?
Well, I'll defer mostly to you. I guess my just general advice is that when I send something, I'm never selling them, okay? When I send something, I'm really not asking them to do much more beyond, would you like to network, have a conversation, and start, the relationship? And that's kind of how I would use the InMail to start the conversation in the first place. I would never try to ask them too much up front, okay? And and that way, I know that they have to actually say yes to the request, that comes in. But if they say yes and they respond back, at least you get that InMail back. So it's always beneficial to try to make sure that your message is brief, doesn't take up much of their time, and more than anything else, it probably would have been much better if you could have primed the pump by having a conversation with them in the comments before you sent the InMail in the first place, because again, they would actually recognize you when they saw it, and it would give a much higher percentage of opening it, as an example. So your thoughts? I don't use InMail myself a great deal, but I do.
Yeah. So firstly, I saw a resource on this in the last week. So if you want to drop me an email after the call, I'll happily send that through. But that particular article was sharing an example of InMails, and they'd used just a couple of lines of quote from a pop song in the opening lines of the InMail. And I think the figure they were quoting was 55–60% response rate to that. I forget the exact stat, but yeah, the less it looks like a copy and paste template, and the more it looks like you've put effort into writing something, I think the better you'll do. But the other big thing that I would say is read your message out loud. I always advise people to try and be conversational rather than stilted or salesy, or like the PR department's written it. But even when people have tried to write conversationally, when you say to them, okay, now read that out loud to me, and they read it, and actually, you wouldn't say this to me if we were sat in a room together. And so have a try, I would say, taking one of the recent ones you've been using, and then try and make it really conversational, so that that is what you would say if you were meeting that person in a hotel lobby, or you bumped into them at a drinks reception or something. And the more it feels like that, I think the more response you'll get. But yeah, the other thing that is worth stressing is that InMail responses for recruitment purposes specifically have gone down very drastically over the last year. So LinkedIn published stats on the response rates to InMails, and for most categories of InMails, they haven't changed a great deal over the last year. But InMails going to people who are open to work, i.e. they're being focused on trying to get people to be interested in a job, the figure was something like the response rate had halved over the last year. I had an exchange with a recruiter about this. Within the last few weeks, this was published. So yeah, there's also that factor to take in. It's not necessarily just that what you're putting out there isn't working. It could also be a function of the fact that the whole market is struggling more with that.
I love your comment about conversational, because I think that is valid no matter where you are on LinkedIn, InMails or otherwise. Honestly, you know, and I don't necessarily read my comments before I click the, you know, the post button, but comments, I comment like I talk. Okay, so you know, if I'd say yippee, you know, in an actual conversation with you, I'd say yippee in my comment as well. You know, there's a lady that I talk with all the time out in Las Vegas, who does LinkedIn lives all the time, or at least once a week, and she's always saying the word woohoo. Okay, and basically she says it in her comments as well. So I think having that conversational tone on your profile, everywhere else that you put in your posts, okay, that's, you know, that's something that you know, if I'd say take a look at this, peeps, you know, in real life, I would say take a look at this, peeps, in my comment or my post as well. It makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, the other thought I've got there, which we've seen play out time and time again, is people are much more responsive to messages from their existing contacts than they are to InMails. So as a recruiter, I appreciate you've got, you know, a short-term requirement come in, you've got to get candidates for that particular role, but putting a bit more of a strategic hat on, if you can work LinkedIn over the next you know, year or two, so that more and more of the niche market you serve, you know, you've saturated, that you're connected to large swathes of the candidates in that market, then more and more of the roles that you're working on, you're going to find you're actually wanting to message people that you are connected to, rather than people where you're having to rely on InMails. Because at the end of the day, InMails come into your inbox and they are very clearly commercial InMails. They're labeled as such, and so they, you know, they don't get the same response as a message from a contact.
Makes perfect sense.
Other questions that we come in. What's a powerful but less well-known feature of LinkedIn which could be used for reaching influential contacts? Any thoughts on that?
We kind of talked about InMail, but that's one of the features, but it's well known, fairly well known anyway. Of course, you have to pay for that. Well, here's one that I'll give you. If you want to start a conversation with someone and you go to their profile and you want to just start the conversation as opposed to connecting with them, what I would recommend, for example, I have one of these, but it doesn't advertise it. It doesn't say so. They might actually have what's called, if they pay for LinkedIn, they might actually have what's called an open profile, which means you could actually send them a message. Okay, so you could actually click the message button and ship them that message that they've said it's okay, LinkedIn, you can send me these kind of things. So try it if as a possibility. Don't just think that you can't send them a message just because you're not connected. Okay. Secondly, one that sometimes gets missed as well is that here's one of the things that if you're looking at a person's profile, especially someone that you want to start that relationship that's influential and you want to get in touch with them, one of the things that you can do is scroll down to the very bottom of their profile, and there's an area at the very bottom of their profile called interests. Okay, if you go down to that area and then click the groups button, you can find the groups that they are a member of and you might also be a member of. And that's another way that if you are a member of the same group, you can actually DM them directly. You can actually send them a message through the group to that person, and it will go directly to them, even though you're not connected. Okay. The other alternative is if you find a group that might be an industry group or something that you might, you know, share with this person as well anyway, you might join a group so you could do what I just described as well. So it's fairly easy to set up that link and get around some of the things that are not as easy to do, if you will. But these are hidden kind of things. If you didn't know that you could send somebody a message directly through a group, you would never even think to go do what I just described.
Absolutely. And if you are connected to them, then the voicemail function and the send a video message function that you can only use via the mobile app, those are another couple of great ways of doing that.
Currently, I wish they'd add that to the desktop. I'd love to be able to use that more.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy. I think the last one that came through in advance, and I'll just look and see if there have been any more come in that we haven't tackled. what are some best practices for outreach and lead generation, be that organic or paid? And they go on to say, I've yet to see a consistently profitable paid LinkedIn campaign be executed.
Yeah, again,
do much of that? Is that something you'd be able to comment on?
well, I think that, from the paid campaign standpoint, LinkedIn makes about 20% of its money through advertising and those types of things. So that's valid for some people, but I honestly would always err on the side of doing what is inside of the tool for free. Being able to, again, start a campaign by starting your own posts and putting something out there and putting the calls to action in those types of things. Again, starting conversations with people that might be your target audience through the comments, as well. I sometimes make a joke about it because I talk about it from the standpoint of, if you look at my profile, you see that I'm really in favor of 3 C's. And in other words, I'm a professional networker. I get paid in 3 C's: coffee, conversation, and occasionally chocolate. Okay. But I talk about content from that perspective as well. When you're trying to do something that's out there, consider it like this in terms of what your campaign should cover. Content is king. Okay. You should have the content that is, that is something you're very passionate about, something that you're very knowledgeable about, something you can talk about in a conversational way. Okay. Second C is context is King Kong. Okay. Because of the fact that it has to be applicable to your audience. If you're talking without applicable to your audience, you're just talking to yourself, which is really not going to get you where you need to be. Okay. And then the third thing is content is king, context is King Kong. Okay. And consistency is King Kong's mother. Okay. Which trumps King Kong, because putting stuff out there on a consistent basis, that way LinkedIn is a long game. I've heard another friend of mine say that LinkedIn's a marathon, not a sprint. It's something that if you're going to get into it, you're going to need to be into it for a length of time before it's going to give you some results. Because I hate to break it to you folks, but there is no such thing as a silver bullet in LinkedIn or otherwise. Okay, so that's my take on that one. Okay.
Yeah, and I think on the paid side, the thing that I would really stress is just how much LinkedIn's advertising is bid up by big corporates who have, multi-million-dollar contracts that they're trying to sell. And so if you're in a smaller business wanting to advertise through LinkedIn, you are directly competing with, the huge marketing budgets of major corporates to try and make things happen. And I haven't had this conversation with a LinkedIn rep for a little while, but the last time I did, their benchmark was $330 to generate one lead from advertising on LinkedIn. And their definition of a lead, by the way, was just that someone had clicked the button to provide you with their name and email address. So it's not actually that they're not actually buying from you yet. That's just someone who, has taken the first step in being a potential lead. And equally, if you go down a pay-per-click type campaign with LinkedIn, most audiences that you would be targeting with that campaign, you're going to be spending more than $10 per click for that campaign to run. So again, if you work those numbers through, get 100 people clicking to your site, you've just spent $1,000, and are any of those 100 people going to convert into a customer for you? So yeah, I think there's a degree to which LinkedIn advertising is somewhat monopolized by the large corporates that can just afford to pay for the exposure in a way that smaller businesses struggle to justify.
Yep, makes perfect sense.
Terrific. Well, I've gone through the live questions we've had today. I've gone through all the questions we had in advance, Jeff. So it's been a really great session. Thank you very much for your time. Any final words you'd like to say?
Just thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it. And I have an open profile. So if anyone has a question that they'd like to ask me after the fact, just plain old go to my profile, click the message button, send me a DM. I will try to get to those and answer them as quickly as I can, because that's why I'm here. I'm here to help, and let's start that conversation and see where we go with it. So namaste and thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us today, and we'll have the recording across to you in a little while. Thank you. Bye for now.